193 passengers and crew who travelled from the Greek island of Zante to the UK today told to self-isolate after 7 confirmed cases of coronavirus. It comes as the world passes an unwanted milestone, 25 million cases recorded globally. Returning to our story now on test and tracing for COVID-19, which will become even more important as people are encouraged to return to their offices. It's led some companies to launch their own tracing solutions to help businesses get employees back to work safely. Joining me now from Boston is Imad Mouline, Chief Technology Officer at global software company Everbridge. Good evening to you. First of all, as we heard last week, the NHS test and trace operation has failed to reach its target for the 9th week. We were told of an app which failed, so that's been taken out of circulation. We're now relying on human beings to manually track and trace. Why do you think it's proving so difficult for the UK?
Well, contact tracing can really be an effective tool to help contain the spread of COVID. It does need to be part of a broader solution. The key is how to effectively protect the health of the public whilst unquestionably protecting the privacy of the individual. It is a difficult balancing act that may require some tweaking, some iterations. So what we have found is that simply reporting on possible exposure, whilst necessary, isn't sufficient. We need tools to help people assess exposure, tools to avoid exposure, tools to report exposure, to identify potential exposure, and then to follow up and follow through with every exposure. I mean, that would be the end-to-end contact tracing that would make it effective.
So go ahead.
And I said, in looking what other countries have done, what the UK could really use to augment these apps as well as the manual contact tracing is also an effective public warning system, the way that Norway, for example, has implemented one. Not only is it about warning people automatically if they cross into a hotspot, but it's also giving advice and instructions to visitors in their own language as soon as they arrive, or do the same with Britons abroad, letting them know what to do whilst away, or reminding them of the protocols as soon as they return home. That is possible in order to be able to mitigate the spread of the virus, knowing if too many people are gathering in one particular spot, for example, without ever identifying the individual. A system that can benefit public health without sacrificing individual privacy.
So you're behind a successful contact tracing system, I believe, in Norway. Explain to us exactly how it works and how successful it's been.
So in Norway, it's really the public warning system that is being used to mitigate ultimately the spread of the virus. What happens there is that the Directorate of Health is leveraging the system in order to send out instructions and protocols to all of the residents as well as to tourists. So, for example, if residents are going to be traveling abroad, they're told in the particular country where they are what that protocol is so that they don't bring the disease back home. As soon as they come back, they're given instructions as to what to do. Ultimately, especially early on within the pandemic, the country was also able to leverage the system to figure out if there was a high density of gatherings that may be ultimately the beginning of a hotspot being created, and leverage the system to automatically send out instructions to the people in that gathering, letting them know to please ultimately disperse very nicely. All of that they were able to do without ultimately or ever tracking individuals. That information and anything that was private never left the telecommunications systems.
And presumably this system that you describe would help in the effort to get people back to work, to get people back into the offices, which is something the government here desperately wants to do.
Absolutely. This is a system that's being used ultimately from a public health perspective, but also by a variety of corporations, especially multinational corporations across the board. What this system does, ultimately is keep an eye on all of the things that organizations care about the most: people, assets, operations, brand, and then keeps track of all of the things that the corporations worry about. pandemics, natural disasters, IT disruptions, everything that's going on every single day that makes returning to work even more difficult. So what the system allows you to do is understand what might affect your organization, be it public or private, and then gives you the tools to automatically manage all of the protocols that help people return safely back to work, whether it's ultimately ensuring that they can assess whether they may be at risk or not, allow for proximity or what's called location-based contact tracing, allow for ultimately a return to work that can be safe and effective without sacrificing privacy.
Have you had any contact with the UK government in terms of offering advice, or have they contacted you?
We have not been contacted by the UK government as a whole, but certainly by multiple organizations within the UK that have used our system very effectively so far.
Okay, Imad Mouline, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us. Good to speak to you.
Thank you.